Before America rose as a strong and fearless nation, there was a young soldier whose courage helped shape the destiny of his land. Before the world knew the United States Army as a force of power, discipline, and honor, there stood a boy who carried nothing but hope in his heart and fire in his soul. This is the untold story of a soldier who walked through fear, darkness, and pain to defend the dream of freedom. A story that begins long before the flag first waved over a free nation. The boy was named James Carter. He lived in a small wooden house surrounded by fields of wheat and tall oak trees. His family was simple and hardworking. Every morning James helped his father with farming, and every evening he sat outside watching the sky, always wondering what his future would become. But inside his heart, he felt a calling. A voice that whispered that he was meant for something greater than the quiet life he lived. When rumors of war spread across the colonies, everything changed. People spoke of a rising conflict between the British Crown and the people who wanted freedom. Men gathered in town halls. Mothers prayed. And young boys like James listened with wide eyes. Soon the revolution erupted. The air filled with fear and hope at the same time. And James knew that he could not stay behind. His mother cried when he told her that he would join the Continental Army. His father placed a hand on his shoulder and said that freedom demands courage. James packed a small cloth bag and left home before sunrise. He turned back only once to see his family waving with tears in their eyes. After that, he walked into history. Life in the army was difficult beyond imagination. There were no proper uniforms, no warm blankets, and barely enough food for the soldiers. Many nights James slept on the cold ground. The wind tore through the tents like sharp blades. But he never complained. He believed that pain was temporary, but freedom would last forever. During the early winter, the army marched toward Valley Forge. Snow covered the land like a white blanket. Trees stood still as if frozen in fear. The soldiers were weak, hungry, and exhausted. Some had no shoes. Their feet left trails of blood in the snow. But they kept moving because turning back meant surrender. At Valley Forge, James saw suffering he had never imagined. Men shivered violently. Some fainted from hunger. Some whispered prayers knowing they might not see another sunrise. Yet in that darkness, James and many others found strength inside themselves. They trained every day under the leadership of General Washington. They built their own huts from frozen wood. They shared the little food they had. They sang songs at night to keep their spirits alive. One night James sat near a small fire. The flames barely moved because the cold air was too strong. He closed his eyes and whispered that he would never let fear win. He knew that the fight ahead would test every part of him. But he also knew that courage grows strongest in the darkest times. One early morning before dawn, the British launched a surprise attack. The sky was black. The ground shook with the thunder of gunfire. Smoke spread across the frozen field. Soldiers rushed out of their huts, grabbing their muskets with trembling hands. James ran forward as fast as he could. He could feel the icy wind slashing against his face. He could hear the cries of wounded soldiers. But he did not stop. A loud blast exploded near him, and he fell to the ground. His ears rang. His chest burned. But he pushed himself up and kept moving. He saw two soldiers lying injured. Without hesitation, he dragged them behind a fallen tree for cover. Bullets ripped through the air like angry whispers. Yet James never backed away. The commander shouted for the line to hold. The men were frightened. Many were slipping on the icy ground. But James stood tall and shouted for them to stay together. His voice carried across the field like a spark of hope. That moment saved the flank from breaking. Later, the commander said that the courage of one young soldier helped hold the entire defense. James was awarded a medal, but he never felt like a hero. He believed he had only done what every soldier should do. Protect his brothers. Protect his land. Protect the dream of freedom. But the journey was far from over. As the war grew more intense, the Continental Army faced new challenges. Supplies were limited. Clothing wore out. Illness spread. Yet James marched on through forests, rivers, and muddy fields. He crossed mountains during storms. He endured hunger, cold, and wounds. But he never let despair enter his heart. When the final stage of the war began, the army moved toward Yorktown. This battle would decide everything. If they won, America would be free. If they lost, the dream of freedom would shatter. The night before the attack, a critical message needed to reach the front line. It contained the final plan that would allow the American forces to trap the British. If the message arrived late, the entire army could be surrounded. The path was dangerous. Enemy patrols filled the woods. The moon hid behind clouds. The air felt heavy and tense. No one wanted to risk the journey. But James stepped forward. He said he would go. The commander looked at him with concern, but James simply nodded and walked into the darkness. He moved through the forest with silent steps. Branches cracked beneath his boots. The cold cut through his coat. He could hear distant voices of enemy guards. He hid behind trees. He crawled across the ground. He crossed a freezing stream that nearly took his breath away. His injured leg ached with every movement, but he kept going. At one point, 2 British soldiers walked past him. James held his breath. His heart pounded like thunder. The soldiers stopped for a moment as if they sensed something. But then they walked away. James waited until the sound of their steps faded. Then he continued his journey. After hours of running and hiding, he finally reached the camp. He delivered the message. The commander quickly gathered the troops and adjusted the entire strategy. This change allowed the American army to surround the British forces. When the sun rose the next morning, the British knew they were defeated. The war was over. America had won. The news spread across the land. People cried. People celebrated. Families embraced one another. And soldiers fell to their knees in relief. James stood among them with tears in his eyes. He thought of his mother, father, and the quiet fields of his home. He thought of the countless soldiers who never returned. He thought of the price of freedom. After the war, James returned to his family. He had grown into a man of strength and wisdom. He carried scars on his body and deeper scars in his heart. But he also carried pride. He knew he had helped build a nation that would inspire generations. People often asked him how he found courage in such impossible moments. James always answered with simple words. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is standing firm even when fear tries to break you. Years passed, and James became a symbol of honor. New generations of soldiers heard his story. They learned how he held the line at Valley Forge, how he carried wounded brothers through fire, how he delivered the message that helped win the war. His spirit became a guiding flame in the training grounds of the United States Army. Even today, instructors tell recruits, stand like James, fight like James, protect like James. Because a soldier does not fight for glory. A soldier fights for the people who cannot fight. A soldier gives strength to the weak, hope to the hopeless, and safety to the land he loves. This was the journey of a boy who became a warrior who carried a nation in his heart, and a soldier whose courage helped shape the story of America.